friends, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we're in the kitchen. We are making and canning taco soup. So if you want to see how we do it, stick around. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. Well, today we're in the kitchen and we are going to be making some taco soup to can. And last night I was trying to figure out how to use up tomatoes and peppers because right now we have a lot of those. And I thought this taco soup would be a good thing to make. We also have corn in the freezer that I had frozen because I knew there were some recipes that I was going to be using them for later for canning. Um, and of course, we've got plenty of onions. So I was trying to think, how I want to use up as many tomatoes and as many peppers as I can so that we can keep those preserved in our pantry. And taco soup is what I came up with. Now, I went through a lot of different recipes, and you don't have to use a canning recipe for soups that you're going to be pressure canning. There are some guidelines. I will attach in the links below a link to the National Center of Home Food Preservation about canning soups and what you can and cannot what you can and cannot can, what you can and cannot process for a pantry soup. Real quickly, pasta of any kind is not recommended. It doesn't retain its shape. It's not tested. Thickeners, it's not recommended to process and preserve any soups that have thickeners in them. Also, dairy products, they don't recommend dairy products like cheese and cream in a soup when you are canning it for the pantry shelf. So those are some of the main don't use when you're canning soups. But if you had a soup that didn't have those ingredients and you had made a lot of it and you were wanting to preserve it, you could can it as long as it fit the guidelines. And again, I will link this soups and what you can and cannot can, and also the amount of time that you'll need to can it, pressure can it, and uh, the um, the ways to make sure it's safe. So basically, if it is a safe food to preserve by canning in a pressure canner, then it is safe to put as an ingredient into a soup. So I have all the ingredients lined up. So what I was going to say is, when I was going through those recipes, I found a lot of taco soup recipes without any peppers. And I wanted to use peppers because we always have peppers in our taco soup or any Mexican soup that we make. And I wanted to use up some of our delicious peppers in that way. So I took a lot of recipes and decided to kind of combine some of the things and make it kind of my own, knowing what our family likes. Also, the soup you can add beef, ground beef, or chicken to this. And in fact, most of the recipes you do use those when you can. But I don't want to add it to my canned soup. I want to add that later. So if I go down to the pantry and get a can of soup, I will fry up some burger, or I will have some frozen chicken that I had left over and froze it and use that in my soup. I just think it's fresher We have canned soups. We have chicken noodle soup with the chicken in it, but as the meat in the jars is in there, sometimes the texture is different than freshly cooked chicken or freshly cooked ground beef. And we just like it better fresh. You know, all right, let's get started on making our soup. Now, last night, after I decided and got my recipe all compiled, I decided to go ahead and do some prepping beforehand. And so I got everything chopped up and ready, and I stuck things in the refrigerator. Now, remember, when you're putting onions and peppers in the refrigerator overnight, be sure they're in a sealed container or covered with plastic wrap, because the last thing you want is everything in your refrigerator tasting like onions and peppers. So be sure, if you're doing that, cover them up good and make sure they're in sealed containers. And I just used leftover containers, and I had this covered with plastic wrap and then aluminum foil over that, just to keep the scent from taking over my refrigerator. I also took tomatoes that I had in the freezer. Earlier, about 4 weeks ago, we had a whole lot of tomatoes and we were getting ready to go out of town, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to do anything with them. So Andy and I real quickly just washed them, took the stem end off, and put them in buckets like this. And these are like ice cream buckets that we got from an ice cream, a dairy that makes ice cream. And I think they might be 3 gallons, but we filled 5 of these with tomatoes and put them in the freezer. And so we now can go out there and get tomatoes if we are needing them and we don't have any in the garden. We do have plenty in the garden. I wanted to make this fast, and so I thought I need to use up some of these, and also we need the freezer space too. And these are so easy to use. In fact, you don't have to, you just run them under hot water and the skins peel right off. I'm going to put a video right here showing you me taking them out of the freezer and preparing them by taking off the skins. And so we'll come right back. I find that this is one of the easiest ways to peel a tomato. It's a lot easier than dipping it in the hot water and then the cold water and then peeling it. You just take your frozen tomato, and we had previously cored them to make this even easier, and you just run it under the hot water, and just within a few seconds the skin will slip completely off. The only downside with this is you are going to have the frozen tomatoes, so it'll take a little longer to heat up, but you could also do this the night before, put it in the refrigerator, and then make your sauce or whatever you're making in the morning. But this is definitely an easy way of peeling tomatoes. So didn't that look easy? So I've got those tomatoes right here. And when you freeze a tomato, it's going to, the cell walls are broken and it's going to be mush. So you can't use them for salsas, canning salsas. They don't recommend that. But you can use them for sauces, spaghetti sauces, or anything that you need to puree. So mine's still a little frosty, but I chopped them up with my chopper, and that way they were just easier to dissolve. And I've got some more right here that I couldn't get in that container. The other thing we need to have ready is beans. So last night I covered these beans with a lot of water. I used black beans, pinto beans, and red beans. You can use any beans you want, whatever you enjoy in your taco soup. I just mixed up several that we like. And I covered them with water and I let them set 12 to 18 hours. So then this morning when I got up, I just rinsed them. Then I put them in a pan that had plenty of water covering them and boiled for 30 minutes. Then I drained, and I have them right here. Before you can anything with beans, it is recommended that you do some cooking of them and do some prep with them. There's another option besides doing it that way, and that one is you can cover the sorted and washed beans with boiling water in a saucepan. Boil them 2 minutes. Remove them from the heat. Soak them 1 hour and then drain. Then you want to drain the cooking water also. You want to drain everything. You don't want to use that cooking water. And that's a quicker way. But since I knew I was going to do this, it was actually quicker for me to have them this morning if I let them soak overnight. But if you all of a sudden decide to can with beans, use that option. I'll leave a link to canning dry beans from the National Center of Home Preservation in the description below. Now, you might be hearing a saw going on out there. My husband's doing some kind of work right now outside. So sorry for that interruption, but I hope it won't be too hard to listen. All right, everything else is just chopped. We have frozen corn, and it's not quite thawed, but that's all right. It's going to be heated up, and we are ready to mix. Once you get the chopping and everything, that prep work, that's the hard part. The rest is just putting it all together and heating it up, putting it into jars and pressure canning. So let's start by adding things. Now, I'm going to leave the recipe for you. You'll see it at the end of the video. Then also in a couple of days, usually 2 days, I will post it on my Facebook page. And that way you'll have it there as well. But I will be telling you what you need as we go along. Now, I made it for, the recipe I made is for, I believe, 7 quarts or 14 pints. So you can can it in quarts or pints. I decided I was going to do just one batch, but then I decided I think I'm going to do a batch and a half because it'd be nice to have 7 quarts, and then a pint would be a nice size for a lunch for like Andy to take to lunch. So I'm going to be making some pints too. So I'll have 7 quarts, maybe 8, and then pints. But that should fit in 2 canners. So we'll see how that goes. Processing time is 1 hour and 30 minutes. And so it does take a while to pressure can them, and you do need to pressure can for that long. This is not a water bath recipe. All right, so let's get started. If you were adding beef, you would fry it up, and it would be 2 pounds of beef, and you would fry it up and then drain it and put it in your pot. You could do the same with chicken. Cook your chicken, shred it up, put it in your pot. We're not adding any meat. So we're going to add 1.5 pounds of our beans. Now it's 1.5 pounds before cooking. And so you'll want to get 1.5. Actually, the recipe calls for 1 pound, but I'm using 1.5 pounds. You'll want to go ahead and start with, I believe each pound is maybe 2.5 cups. Google that and that'll tell you how much. But I have 1.5 pounds dried, and now they have water in them, and they are fully cooked and tender, and they're going in. We need our liquid, and our liquid is going to be, the recipe is for 10 cups of liquid. It can be tomato juice, it can be water, it can be stock, broth, any of those things would be fine. I am going to be using a mixture, and I'm going to use for 1.5 batches, 15 cups. So I have some chicken broth right here, and you could use beef or chicken. And let me give it a stir here. And this is 8 cups. Then I have a can of tomato juice, and you can see it separates as it sits on the shelf, but you can just give that a shake, and then you have your tomato juice. And this quart has 4 cups in it, so this makes, adding this will make 12 cups. And then I've got extra tomatoes here and extra liquid. So what I'm going to do, this is 12 cups right here. I am going to, let me think, I need 3 more cups. I've got 2 cups of liquid there. So I'm going to get about 1 more cup of liquid and put it in this, and we'll add it. So 1 cup of water. And this is about 2 cups of liquid, and then I'm keeping a cup in there because that makes the 9 cups that I need of tomatoes. And it's almost 9 cups in here, but I'm just giving myself a little extra. You don't want to have less liquid because you do have the beans and they will absorb some more liquid. Also, the vegetables will probably let off some liquid, but you need to make sure there is liquid for the soup to process correctly. So then after we added our 10 cups for the single recipe, 15 cups of liquid for my recipe that I'm doing today, you'll need 4 pounds of chopped tomatoes. And a pound of tomatoes is about, if you get a pound of tomatoes with skins and stems and everything, that is about 1.5 cups of trimmed and peeled and chopped tomatoes. So you would need, for 4 pounds, you would need 6 cups, and I'm going to use 9 cups since I'm doing a recipe and a half. So this is almost 9. And I pulled out my biggest, well, it's not my biggest, but the biggest pan that I can really use on my stove. There we go. Because this is going to make a lot of soup. Then we need, you're going to use 4 cups of diced onions for a single recipe. I've got 6 cups. And those were chopped about 1 inch. I like my onions a little bit bigger because they melt down so much. Oh, let's see. We will need, you'll need 4 cups of chopped peppers. I'll need 6. So I have 4 or 5 cups of sweet peppers here, and that's mostly Marconi and bell and chili pie. And then I've got about 2 cups of jalapenos here, and I'm going to add about a cup. And after I get this going and heated, I'm going to taste it, and if I think it could use a little more heat, I will add it. If not, I'm good. Now, if you don't like heat, don't add hot peppers. It's not going to make too much of a heat because, again, I'm not a real spicy loving person. I do like a little, but not a lot. So if you don't like any spice at all there, leave them out. If you like a little, add a little, taste it while it's heating up and see what you think. Then we need 4 cups of corn. That could be fresh corn, frozen corn, or canned corn, and that's drained. I'll use 6 cups, and this is frozen, and it's what we had this year in our garden. And I'm just going to try breaking it up in there. You're going to add 10 cloves of garlic chopped. I've got 15 cloves. You're going to add 2 teaspoons of salt, and that is non-iodinized salt. I'm adding 3 tablespoons. And I'm going to add 2, and I'm going to taste it because my broth did have salt in it. We want 3 tablespoons of chili powder. You are going to add 2 tablespoons of chili powder. And again, you season it the way you like. If you like more chili powder, you can add more chili powder. So I always taste it while it's cooking and then just add a little bit of stuff that I think could be added. I'm also going to add let's add 2 heaping tablespoons of taco seasoning. Now, on the store-bought taco seasoning, it does have thickener in it. So you might want to make your own taco seasoning. I don't know if there's enough in there to make a difference with the canning. Probably not. I know I've seen canning recipes with it added, but whether they are tested or not, I'm not sure. My homemade taco seasoning, which you could go back and watch the video for, does not have any thickeners, no cornstarch or anything like that in it. And so it's safe to use. Let's add 1 tablespoon of ground black pepper. I'll add 1.5 tablespoons. There it is. And I think, make sure I've got everything that I've laid out. Oh, I'm going to add some extra cumin. My taco seasoning has some. I'm going to add a tablespoon. And that's just ground cumin. And I'm going to write what I added there because all right, now we've got everything in. It's time to give it a stir. It is up to here on this pot. It looks great. We are almost into soup weather. Temperatures, we have our windows open today. They are in the upper 70s. Nice northern breeze. So it's feeling good out there. We are still really dry. We still have lots of peppers and we still have lots of tomatoes coming on. We'll always end up right before frost picking all of our peppers and then processing those. There's several videos that I've done using the peppers and the tomatoes. I know that I've got a couple more things that I'm going to do with tomatoes here. Whether I'll make videos or not with them, I'm not sure. But we are just wrapping up our garden. But I think our tomatoes and our peppers are going to produce all the way until frost. The only thing left is our apples. So we will be processing apples. We have a Suncrisp apple tree that I believe is usually ripe maybe end of September, 1st of October, something like that. And those are really good apples. We're hoping our birds stay away from them. I know our galas were getting eaten really badly as they were turning red, we would see these beautiful big gala apples up higher and get a ladder to pick them, and the tops of them were all hollowed out from the birds. And so we had to pick them just a little bit before we wanted to, but they turned out great for our applesauce and cooking and all of that. But I still today will probably make more applesauce and can it. I've frozen a lot. I've canned quite a bit too, but we do like our applesauce, and you can use it for cooking too. So that's kind of our garden update right now. Oh, I do have okra still coming off, and I just chop it and freeze it. Oh, and sweet potatoes. We have sweet potatoes that we haven't checked on, but we won't check on them until right before frost. And we've not dug all of our potatoes. They've just finally lost their leaves. We've just dug them as we've wanted to eat them. We didn't plant that many this year because I still have quite a few cans of potatoes, and we love to use our canned potatoes in soups. That's the way we really love to use our canned potatoes. I freeze them and chop them in different ways to use for mashed potatoes or roasted potatoes or things like that, but we didn't plant that many this year, so I'm not too worried about being overwhelmed with those. But there is what our soup is looking like. Now I'm going to put this on the heat, and it's going to take a while to get hot. And I need to bring it up to a boil, a gentle boil, and I need to let it boil for about 5 minutes. And that's basically getting everything heated through. And that will help with your vegetables expanding and then collapsing during the canning process and help with siphoning. So I'll be putting this on our burner, and while that's heating up, I'll get all of this cleaned up. I'll get my jars ready. You don't have to have sterilized jars. You do need to have clean jars, but you don't have to sterilize them. It will be sterilized in the pressure canner. And I'll get my pressure canners going too. Remember to follow the directions on your pressure canner and have it ready so that when your soup is ready to be placed in there, all the lids are on it, it is ready to go. That way you will have it up to pressure a little quicker. All right, well, I'll bring you back when everything's ready. All right, it has boiled and cooked for just a little bit there on to get it fully heated, and it's looking really good. I tasted it and I didn't need to add any more jalapeno or salt or anything like that. It tasted just right. The jalapeno does make it have a little kick. It's not something that is uncomfortable to eat or anything, so be sure you add what you like to your soup. So we are ready to can this up. And so I'm going to first start with my quarts. I do have I've got 2 pressure canners set up out in my mudroom, and they are heating up and should be ready by the time I get these ready to go into them. So we are going to be processing the quarts for an hour and 30 minutes, which is 90 minutes. If you're using pints, they need to be canned for 75 minutes. I will be doing quarts in one canner and pints in the other, so that will work out fine. If you were combining the two, you would have to cook all of them at the 90 minutes. And let's see, we will need, I'm thinking it's probably at least an inch. Yeah, an inch, a nice inch headspace, so that they won't be siphoning, and it'll give them a good seal. So let's jar it up, and it has a really good consistency, really rich looking, and I would have no problem eating this without any meat. It's really, really good. The broth that's in there added a nice richness, and of course all the tomatoes make such a good broth as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill these up, and I'm just kind of going to continue to stir them as I'm scooping them, so I get, all the juice and the vegetables We want to get an even amount so that all jars have the same consistency. And I won't fill it all the way up to the top. I'll just leave a little bit so that I can top them all off at the same time if I just have juice or if I just have vegetables. But the corn, it's a really pretty soup too. It's got yellow and red and green and white from the onions. So very, very nice and appetizing looking soup. I'll show you one close up after I get it all jarred up. I'll fast forward this so that you don't have to watch me fill all of these up, and we'll slow it back down when I'm done. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to get these in the canner since they're going to take longer to cook, and then I'll come back and I'll fill those. I'm going to put this on the stove to keep it warm. So let's get these finished up and I'll show you how we process them in the pressure canner. So let me grab, okay, so we're going to first debubble. We want to make sure there's no bubbles in there so we have the correct headspace and it will seal correctly. And this is pretty easy to do with this soup. It's got quite a bit of liquid in it. And then if you need to add a little bit more, you can. I think mine looks okay. I'm going to get a paper towel so we can clean the rims. And so you want to get the rims really clean because that will affect your seal. If you have anything on the rim, it could cause a gap and your lid won't seal. So we want to get those nice and clean. And I'm using vinegar because it cuts through anything, especially if I had meat in here. I did have the broth and it did have some oil in it. So anytime you've got oil or anything that's sticky, go ahead and use the vinegar. It cleans it off really nicely. And you just want to fill those rims as you're doing this because you might have a chip or a crack. And if you do, it will not seal correctly. And you want to see if you have that before putting it in the processor. If you find you do have something that has a rough edge or a chip, go ahead and change out that jar. All right. Those look good. And I've just washed my lids. They're not sterilized. I've not boiled them. They are just washed in hot sudsy water and then rinsed well. Then we're going to put our rings on fingertip tight. You want to make sure they're on there good. Sometimes it might feel like it didn't go down correctly, and if not, you might open it back and turn it again. You don't want to cross thread it because that will keep it from sealing too. Okay, like I said, my pressure canner is outside, and I am just going to put these cans in this container real quickly so I can take them out there. and mine will hold 7 quarts. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place them in there, and then once they're in, I'm going to close and lock the lid. I'm not going to put the weight on it. You want to keep the weight off until it has vented with full steam for 10 minutes. Once it's boiled, vented for 10 minutes, then we'll put the weight on. It will bring it to the right pressure, between 10 and 11 pounds for my area. And then it will need to start timing at that point. Once it's at the right pounds of pressure, then you can start timing. And again, these will be 1 hour and 30 minutes. All right, so I've kept the soup on the burner, kept it warm. It was still boiling. So now I've got those quarts in the pressure canner out in our mudroom. So it's just about ready to come up to a vent. I'm going to fill these pints. I'm going to fill them the same way that I did the quarts, with a 1-inch headspace. Do the lids the same way. And we'll see how many we get. We might get more than what I've got here, so I might need to get a few more jars. But then I'm not going to videotape this part because it's the exact same thing as the quarts. But when I bring you back, I know there's a lot of people who haven't canned or are a little insecure about canning, that I'm going to show you next time we come back. I'll be out in the mudroom with the gas burners and the pressure canners, and I'll show you how we put these in, how we close the lid, how we vent it, and all of that, so that you can be a little more understanding of the process and maybe feel a little more secure about canning your own food. So I'll bring you back here in just a second. All right, I've got you out here in our mud room, and it is just really nice out today. We've got a nice northerly breeze coming in, so this is a perfect place for me to have this going. It doesn't heat up the house. It works really, really well. So this is the one right here that we have the quarts in, and it's just about up to pressure. I'll show you that in just a second. So what you have when you're pressure canning is you have let's start with, you have a gauge. Not all pressure canners do, but a lot of them do have the gauge, and this tells you what pounds of pressure you have. Now you might need to Google your location and ask what your elevation is. If you are under 1,000 feet elevation, just like we are, you're going to have it 10 to 11 pounds of pressure. If you're over, it's going to change, and so you'll need to read and see what your pounds of pressure is going to need. You have your vent, which is where the steam comes off and releases some of the pressure so that you don't get it too dangerously high, and it adjusts to the appropriate temperature or the appropriate pressure for your area. And you have a safety lock right here. When this pops up, you can't open your pan, and that's very nice to have. When it's up, that means there's pressure in the pan, and you don't want to open it. That would be dangerous. So the first thing you want to do is you want to look through your vent just to make sure you can see through it and that it's clean. And mine is clean. Oh, and you also have a little safety plug here, and it's just a piece of rubber. And if the pressure ever does get out of control, it will pop this out. It's just a piece of rubber. It will pop this out before this canister can actually explode. I just replaced on this one here the safety plug and also the rubber gasket, which is this right here. I had probably had that one 4 years, and it was getting a little bit harder. It wasn't as soft, so I put a new one on, and I think that's good. So just make sure your rubber gasket is soft and everything looks good. All right, so we're ready to set this aside. And as you can see, I'm going to bring you down here for a second. As you can see, we have come to, I think you can see that. It's at 10 to 11 pounds of pressure, and it's starting to wiggle, and that's releasing the pressure so it won't go higher. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit because I don't want it to rock too fast. That will cause siphoning. It will just boil too quickly and cause siphoning. So all I want is that to gently be rocking. If I notice it's getting kind of crazy, I'll just turn it down just a little tiny bit and adjust it slowly. If you adjust it too far, it can cause a rapid change in temperature, and that can also cause siphoning. So I think that looks pretty good right there. May go down just one little tiny notch and see. It's amazing how just barely a little turn can make a difference. So we'll just kind of listen to that and make sure it keeps rocking. If at any time your pressure goes below what it needs to be, and if it goes below 10 to 11 pounds, then I need to start all over on my timing again. So you don't want it to go below that amount of pressure. Now, if it continues like this right here, that will be perfect. But if it goes too slow, I will want to turn it up a little bit more. But that is just, you can see it's right there. Just that seems like the sweet spot right there. Okay, so let's look right over here. And here's our pan that we're going to be using right here. And I've got my jars that I need to real quickly get inside there. My water is boiling, just barely simmering. My jars are really hot. You always have to have the same temperature, hot and hot water, hot jars, or cold water, cold jars. That way you will reduce the chance of your jars cracking. Now my canner will hold, I think it's 9 pints. Let's see. One, two, I think maybe it's 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's 9 pints, so I've got 9 in there. And those are all perfect. If I had more, I could add, with these tall pressure canners, I could add another layer by putting a grate between them and then stacking another set right above it, and that would be fine too. But we've got it to fit perfectly. So now we're going to put the lid on. And you've got to line up. There's some words here. And then it says right here, if you can read that or not, it says open this way, close that way. We've got to get that little arrow right there on that little arrow on the handle. And then close. There we go. So now I want to put the heat up. I just had it simmering, and I'm going to put it on a medium high. And when we see a steady stream of steam coming out of this, and you can even hear it, then I know that it's venting. And when I first see that, I'm going to start timing for 10 minutes because I want it to vent for 10 minutes. Then once it's vented for 10 minutes, I will put my weight on. And for my area, my weight is 10 pounds. Now, if you have a Presto canner like I do, your Presto canner, let me grab one of these here. Okay. So if you have a Presto canner, yours came with this. It is 15 pounds. If you put this on, you have to babysit your canner because it can go all the way up to 15 pounds of pressure, which would be too high if you live in my area. And I don't want it to can at 15 pounds. It's just too high. So I would have to really monitor my heat level by turning down my flame and really watching it, because it's not going to make the rattling sound. I know, like if I'm over here doing something, I'm still going to be in the kitchen, But I know that if I'm doing something and I don't hear that rattling, I know that it's dropping in temperature. But if you never hear the rattling because of this, it's really hard to monitor. So this will always release. It gets faster when it gets to 11 pounds. It's always going to release so that it tries to stay in that range. Okay. So what I did was on Amazon, they have these adjustable weights. And if you get your number on your Presto canner, and it's usually right underneath the handle here, your model number, put that in. They have these adjustable weights available, and you can take off the weights. If it's like this, it's 5 pounds. If it has one on, it's 10 pounds. If it has two on, it's 15 pounds. I just need the one on. Now I can hear it rattling whenever it's 10, 11 pounds of pressure. Okay, so if you don't have one of these and you have a Presto, I think you'd really like this. So this one right here hasn't started venting yet. Let's turn it up just a little bit more. One thing about these gas cooking stoves is the flames are a lot hotter. I don't know if that's called the BTU. They're a lot stronger than the flames on my stove. So you've got to be careful not to overheat and get them going too high, because that can be dangerous too. So we're going to see when this starts venting, and I see some venting starting right now. It may be hard to see in the camera. It's just about there. There's a stream of air coming out. I just want to make it so that it's a little bit more forceful. There it goes. I hope you can see that. I don't know. Okay, so it's steaming. It's venting right now, so I need to start my timer for 10 minutes. When 10 minutes is up, I'll bring you back. Our timer went off. We've been venting for 10 minutes. We'll put our weight on there. And a lot of people are afraid of that steam. It's really not that hot. Don't be afraid of that steam. Some people put a oven mitt on their hand to put it down, but unless you hold your hand right there for a long time, it doesn't get hot enough to burn you right there. Just set that on gently. And this should start going up pretty quickly. We are almost at 5 pounds of pressure. And as you see over here, we're doing really good. It's just got a perfect jiggle right there, and we're going just fine on that. So it's getting really close to 10 pounds, and as you can see, it's starting to wiggle. There we go. We're going to let that start going. There we go. We're at 10 pounds of pressure there. And I'm going to let it just go for just a second. I'm going to slowly adjust it down so it's easier to, it won't go too high, and it won't be too rough on the food in the jars. We don't want them boiling like crazy in there. All right, so these are going to be pressure canning and processing. The one over here on the left is going for an hour and 30 minutes, which is 90 minutes. The one on the right has the pints, and it's going to be pressure canning for 75 minutes. And then when they are done, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn the flame off. Don't touch anything, the weights or anything. Wait for it to come down to a 0 pressure, and then probably wait another 10 or 15 minutes after that. Both of the canners have gone down to 0 pounds of pressure. It ended up they were just 10 minutes apart finishing up, since this one started first and it takes longer, so it worked out perfectly. So we're going to, first of all, no air at all in there. They've been out or stopped for quite some time. I mean, they're still very hot to touch, but this one should be good too. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very carefully, and the lock went down, so it's able to open. Turn it and open it, but I'm not going to open it all the way. I'm just going to kind of skew the top a little bit like that. And I'm going to do the same thing for this one. Just turn it just a little so some air comes out. And that way I'm going to let that set for 10 minutes now. Okay, we're going to see how they came out. Let's start with the quartz. It's still hot in there. My water looks clear inside, so I didn't have any of the siphoning. Look at that. Looks really pretty. Hope you can see that. So that one looks super. They all did really well. Like I said, the water in there is clear, so that means no siphoning in that one. Super. Let's see if we're as lucky with this one. I have clear water in here too. Yay. Let's see, let's pull one out. And there is the pint, and you can see the corn and the beans and the peppers. Everything looks really good. No siphoning in that one. Wow. This is going to be great. I can't wait to get this on the pantry shelf. We had just a little bit left over, and my husband and I both tried it, and it was really good. And you don't even need any meat in it, but you can add meat. That's fine. So if you like Mexican taco type soups, this is a great one to can up. I highly recommend it. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it and found it helpful, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that. Also, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Don't forget to like and share this video. In the description box below, you will find the links that I talked about earlier in this video posted down there. At the end of this video, you will see a picture of the recipe, and you can either take a screenshot or you can pause it and write down the recipe. In about 2 days, I will post the recipe on the Blue Rooster Farm Facebook page, and so you can go there by finding the link below. So thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you back here soon. Bye-bye.